6, 7, 8 years old, to me this is the golden age of childhood, because I think this is that period when you first get serious about discovering the world on your own terms. And you often do it through trial and error. So you do things, stuff happens, you learn. You do more things, more stuff happens, and it goes on. And it's also a period when I think most parents are really scared, because at this period, your brain believes absolutely everything that comes into your head. And it also believes everything you make up. So you have a situation in which there's total gullibility on one side, and you have infinite optimism here. And the two come together, and it's a very potent mix. So my story takes place in this age, and it's about a trip to the circus. So the first part of the trip, from the house to the circus, was okay. We're going to the circus, it's fun, we're excited. And then when I got inside the tent and looked around, I thought, hey, something's wrong, this isn't right. And I didn't just speak for myself, I think I spoke for every child in that circus. It wasn't right. Because our knowledge of a circus had been gained by watching Billy Smart's Circus on BBC every Christmas. And Billy Smart's Circus was massive, it was glorious, it was shiny, it was sparkly, it was a phenomenal thing. And apparently at least 73% of the children of my generation at some point wanted to leave their houses and go and live with Billy Smart. We couldn't find the address, and so we stayed at home. Sad. So there we are in this tent, and it's largish, but it's sort of grubby. It's not nice like Billy Smart Circus, and the chairs are really uncomfortable, incredibly uncomfortable. And back then, children, you weren't allowed to slouch, so you couldn't sort of just sit and say, oh man, I hate it here. You had to sit like a gentleman or like a lady, and so you're sitting there, and we're sitting and waiting, the tent has to fill, and then we're sitting, and then the ringmaster comes, top hat, coattails, and he just says stuff. It's sort of like blah, 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 blah. We can't understand it, we're children. He's using all these words. And we wait for this, we wait for this, and eventually it finishes, and the first act comes on. These are jugglers. So you have some jugglers with skittles, and you have some jugglers with hoops. So the jugglers with skittles juggle, then the jugglers with hoops juggle, then the jugglers with hoops juggle with the skittle people, and the skittle people juggle with the hoop people. And at that point you think, okay, it's good, nice, go away. But they don't go away, they don't go away, because they're addicted to juggling. And they juggle and juggle and juggle. And it sounds funny, but if you're a child, it's very boring. When you're there, you can't move, you can't slouch, and they're juggling, and it goes on and on and on. Stop juggling, please. And they go on, and just about minutes before one of the younger children would start frothing at the mouth, the act ended. And the next group came on, and these were the unicyclists. And that's very disappointing, because the unicycle is actually a filler act. When there are not enough acts in the circus, you get unicycles. I'm sorry if you like unicycles, it's the truth. So they're unicycling around and around and around, it goes on and on, and it just goes on, and they're addicted to unicycling just like the jugglers are addicted to juggling. So it goes on and it goes on, and we're really, it's painful to sit there and watch this. And then another act comes on, and it's also boring, and another one, and another one. And actually in the tent you had a kind of childhood suffering. This kind of suffering, oh my goodness. And eventually there's a ray of hope, because the elephants come up. So these elephants, they're big and they're usually impressive. We'd been to the zoo and seen elephants, you look up the elephant looks back, I'm an elephant. Elephants are big. But these ones had very low self-esteem. So they were sort of saying, oh, should we do this? Should I pick up this stuff? Should I put my foot on the ball? It was just misery. They were really bad elephants. Then they started going around in a circle this way, then they went the other way, and they did the sort of figure eight. And then one of the elephants farted. Now, I'm not a fart joke person, okay, but this is an elephant one, and it's a different dimension, because every child in the circus, the elephant fart opened our imaginations. We started imagining, what can an elephant fart do? Blow away the tent, sing jingles. And we were just giggling away, and then our parents, shh. So you have to swallow the giggle. And you've got this giggle on this horrible chair, and you're just fidgeting, it's just hell. And so the elephants do a couple more rounds and they go out, and then come the clowns. And you would think, you know, if you're a professional clown, you've got the sort of collected energy of these suppressed giggles. So I would take it, add it to my act, and do something. But I'm afraid these clowns were professional bastards. They dressed like clowns. They didn't do anything to make us laugh. They're like, yeah, I'm a clown, yeah, I'm funny, I don't know. Oh, I'm going to throw some more. I'm going to fall over. And it was horrible. It was just horrible. And one child somewhere obviously found it so horrible, they rolled their eyes and sighed. That made another child roll their eyes and sigh. And soon around the ring, everybody, all the children, were also going, oh. We're just sighing because the clowns were so terrible. And then our mum sort of stuck that finger in your head and says, will you stop that nonsense immediately? So we suffered in silence while these clowns went on. And they went away, and finally, by this time, our spirits had been broken, shattered. We had no more expectations. So when the lions came, the lions were sort of meaty like Arnold Schwarzenegger with big afros. They came in. The ring guy cracked a whip, and they didn't sort of roar, you know, like, no, they just sort of, they just went off, they just disappeared. And maybe some of our older brothers and sisters understood what suicide was, but we didn't. And yet, I know half of us wondered what was the point of living another second. But as these things happened, the point appeared out of nowhere. There's this drum roll, and then suddenly these searchlights are sort of scanning the roof of the circus tent. And up there on the high wire, we see in glittery gear the trapeze artists. And the trapeze artists, they swooped and they twisted and they looped back and forth, and all of us were staring at this. There was no net, and it was high. And those of us who still tried to fly by jumping out of a tree knew that that height was brutal. So it was amazing. And finally they finished, and for the first time that evening, there was a loud applause. We were so excited. Everybody really loved this thing. And then I found them wonderful, but what happened next? What happened next? What I saw next frazzled my brain. There's this big midnight blue disc with lilac and gold stars. And on it is tied like this, like a warrior, captured warrior, a woman with long black hair. There she is. Her partner is a little guy, also with long black hair. And he had this funny way, he was sort of walking like this. I don't know why, but that's really, he walked that way. But that wasn't the point. The point was he had a cape. And this cape of his, it fell over his left shoulder, and he'd throw it back with a flourish. He'd throw it back like that. And I looked at him throwing this thing back, and I thought, this is the most wonderful thing I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen anyone throw a cape like that. And it wasn't just me, because when that happened, I can't be sure, but I think there was a shiver that ran through the circus. Furthermore, for the next month and a half, I walked through Oxford, throwing this imaginary cape over my shoulder. I had a flourish, until one bully boy slapped me in the head because I was getting on his nerves. It was very hard times. Anyway, back at the circus, this little guy, he unfurls this black bundle, and you have all these knives, lots of sparkly knives, all kinds of knives. And then the wheel begins to turn, and the woman on it, she's turning slowly. And this guy, he flourishes, packs it up, he throws it, knives next to her neck. And he takes another knife and throws it, and again, all these knives are just flying, and he's just doing it as if it's nothing. And suddenly, I'm thinking, oh my God, that's the future, that is my future. There were other acts, and I can't remember any of them. I just thought of knife throwing. So that night, I try to sleep. I can't sleep because I have these visions of me as the greatest knife thrower in the world, the genius knife thrower. I'd be so good, you could blindfold me, have a dog on my leg, and I'd throw a knife, and at 50 meters, I would just nick the wing of a fly. I'd be so good, I think, that French food festivals would plead with me to come and demonstrate the kitchen weaponry. The bread knife, the mallet. I'd be wonderful. I'd just be throwing things all over. But anyway, that aside. So we go home excited. The next afternoon, we, the kids, are in my parents' room bouncing on their bed. We're bouncing on their bed because their bed is the most bounceable object in our house. We know this because we've done bounceability tests on everything. A floor, it doesn't bounce, it's very painful. A chair bounces well, but it's random, so you can't plan your landing. Very dangerous. But the mattress, it just had a perfect bounce. We could bounce and bounce and bounce. So we're bouncing, talking about the circus, and then suddenly, midway between a break of bouncing, my three sisters sitting there, I have this wonderful idea, genius idea. So I go to my mother's dresser, get us a pair of scissors, and I throw them. And then something very odd happens. I can't move. I can't move. I can't feel anything, but I see and hear everything in that room. The scissors didn't enter the wall as planned. It entered my sister's neck, just on the outside of her eye socket. There's blood and there is screaming. My mother comes in, she's calling Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. My dad comes, tells my mom to stop calling Jesus, call the ambulance. Why don't you call the ambulance yourself? No. The ambulance comes, takes my sister away, and they're back within a couple of hours. She has stitches, and she has a patch here. For the next 7 years, though it could have been 1.5 weeks, I was given the other side of the table treatment. So you have to imagine like a dining table, you're on one side eating, then on the other side your whole family, all squashed up together, talking with each other, but they won't talk to you. That's what it felt like. It wasn't exactly that way, but it felt that way. I met my sister, who I hurt. She talked to me though. She told me about the trip in the ambulance. She told me about the smell of the hospital. She told me about the nurses. She told me about the doctor who cleaned the wound and stitched it. She also told me that she never cried. And throughout her life, never once did she accuse me of ever trying to hurt her or damage her or blind her. And had that been me, it would be different, because I would have blackmailed my way to I would say, hey, you nearly blinded me, go and work, earn a lot of money, give me half. That's what I would do. But she never did this. She never did this, ever. And I like to think, I like to imagine that one of the reasons she didn't do this is because she understood that my actions were the actions of an accidentally dangerous mind. That they were the actions of a mind that believed everything was possible. And it's those minds that believe everything is possible. They get us into trouble, but they really do move everything forward. So, in ending, I have one thing to say to everyone here: let's all stay dangerous. Thank you very much.